Hi, it's Dwyer, January the 3rd, 2022. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. Dwyercrime.blog, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, I'm very concerned. Let me repeat that. I'm very concerned about this Iowa college quadruple murder case. You know, it certainly is possible with regard to the suspect, the 28-year-old, that police right now have in custody, that the police have a smoking gun. The blood of the 4 victims might have been found in the suspect's car. I'm just speculating. Or a bloody fingerprint from the suspect might have been found at the murder scene. Let's all understand that DNA evidence, which could have been left at the murder scene at any time, would not be as convincing as a bloody fingerprint that would necessarily have been left there at the time of the bloody murders. Let me concede up front that the police might have a smoking gun. But at this point, I'm a skeptic. Absent such evidence, I haven't heard anything. Let me repeat that. I haven't heard anything that would suggest that the police have arrested the right suspect. First of all, understand the police are missing a big piece of evidence. They haven't found the murder weapon. Right? All they have are the wounds on the victim and speculation. They have not found the murder weapon as I make this video on January the 3rd, 2023. Let me also point out that the alleged killer is 28, does not attend the victim's college, doesn't appear to have any common friends with any of the victims. Right? Thus far, no common friends have been identified or have come forward. And of course, the suspect was a PhD student who was also working as a teaching assistant in a school more than 10 miles away. In other words, the suspect had significant responsibilities that included a job, and in my opinion, did not have time to stalk much younger people, 20 and 21-year-olds, at a college that he did not attend. He also is supposed to be handling an addiction to heroin. So he's supposed to be an addict with a job who is organized and driven enough to plan these bloody murders at a different college and to get away with it without witnesses, without waking up housemates, right? You have 2 housemates sleeping on the 2nd floor where one of the bodies is found, and neither of them is awakened. And of course, here's a heroin addict who's supposed to have left a quadruple stabbing without leaving a blood trail. Now, let me point out that the 2 housemates who slept through the multiple murders, we'll just give their first names, Bethany and Dylan, were home during the attack, which we believe took place around 3:30 in the morning, and slept through it. Right now, these surviving roommates have been ruled out as suspects. But just understand, we're to believe that someone who did not attend the college, who is dealing with a heroin addiction, at 3:30 a.m. on a Sunday is able to kill 4 people so efficiently that 2 of the people at the house slept through the mass murder. Now, understand how high risk this is, right? Just the number of victims makes it high risk. There's Ethan, he's 20. There's Exana, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing names, she's 20. There's Kaylee, she's 21, and there's Madison, she's 21. Right? All 4 of them are stabbed to death, police believe, sometime between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. That's Sunday morning. Now, the residence is a 3-story residence with at least 4 bedrooms. The victims and their roommates rented out the house in June. So that means that between June and November, this suspect would have to then become aware of these victims, if you believe the crime is planned, right? And then, with a timeline starting in June to November, be able to pull off these murders in such a way that multiple housemates were able to sleep through them. Now, let me just say how efficient the killer is. The crime scene at 1122 King Street, that's the address in Moscow, Idaho, of the house, was such that when the roommates woke up the next morning, they found a victim on the 2nd floor. They assumed the victim had passed out. In other words, the killer's so efficient, folks, you see a roommate, they're not moving. There aren't blood stains all around. There's nothing to indicate that that roommate had been stabbed. Right? The 2 housemates who slept through the murders didn't realize at first that their roommate had been stabbed to death. Now, the alleged killer, Brian Koberger, that's the gentleman in custody, has a master's in criminology and is presumed by many following the case, the comments I've come across online, that because he had a master's in criminology, he had some expert knowledge about committing crimes and avoiding detection. Right? That seems to be the prevailing thought. And yet, as far as we know, this is the first murder he has been suspected of committing. In other words, he has no violent criminal history. He's supposed to be some kind of criminology expert. And yet, he supposedly drove a white Hyundai Elantra, which he continued to drive after the 4 murders, and which he drove with his father on a planned trip, interstate, cross-country, to his parents' home in Pennsylvania. So he continued to drive the alleged getaway car for weeks after the bloody stabbings of 4 people. And he drove that car for hundreds of miles. He also apparently was not concerned about any possibility that his father might find bloodstains in the car. Now keep in mind, the 4 murders are supposed to be stabbings. How would he stab 4 people, not leave a blood trail, and not leave blood stains in his car? We haven't yet heard publicly of any blood stains being in his car. Let me also point out, too, that Newsweek, in covering this case, actually pointed out that a spokesman of the Eugene Police Department told them, here's the quote, "We have no information to indicate the vehicle is related to the Moscow, Idaho case." Right? This was when reports of a white Hyundai Elantra were first raised before they found the suspect, Brian. In other words, the cops heard of the make and model of the car, but had no reason, at least initially, to believe that that car was involved in the 4 murders. Let's also talk about the logistics of the crime. They're troubling. The police want you to believe that by himself, without help of any kind, no lookout, no accomplice, Kohberger is supposed to have entered a 3-story building where 6 people lived. According to Yahoo, it was a 4-bedroom home. 2 bedrooms are on the 2nd floor, 2 are on the 3rd floor. Now, one of the bodies was found on the 2nd floor. So let's talk about timing. If the person on the 2nd floor was killed before the suspect went to the 3rd floor, why would the suspect go to the 3rd floor? If he had staked out the house and knew of the kids who lived there, he would have known that 2 other people lived on the 2nd floor. In other words, if you believe that he killed the person found on the 2nd floor first, then he would have entered the home, known that 3 people lived on the 2nd floor. That's if he did surveillance, as the police suspect. He would have gotten in a tussle with one of them, quickly killed that person. And then, rather than leave, rather than have the mindset of, hey, I'm in here, I've killed one person, these 2 other housemates on this floor might have been awakened, might be calling police, might be ready to come after me, might have a firearm, a knife, a hoe. No, there's none of that. If you believe he kills the person on the 2nd floor, understand he then goes upstairs to get to the 3rd floor, where there are 3 other people. And he's doing all of this by himself. Do you believe that's how it happened? Let's also continue to talk about logistics. What's his motive when he enters the house? Is it to get the thrill of killing someone, right? He has a master's in criminology. If you believe the storyline going around, somehow he's obsessed or intrigued or interested in the idea of killing someone. Wouldn't he have gotten that thrill already by killing the person he encounters on the 2nd floor? Or is he more targeted than that? Is he actually in the house with a desire to kill not just anyone, but someone in particular? Let's say he's in the house. He's stalked out the place. He knows that the person he wants to kill is on the 3rd floor. So he kills someone on the 2nd floor, apparently is not concerned about the other people living on the 2nd floor. Apparently he's not concerned about being detected, even though he has no lookout. Then he goes up to the 3rd floor. Do we have any evidence that he knew anyone on the 3rd floor well enough to target them for death? Let me point out, too, that he comes back downstairs. Now, let's say he enters the home and he goes up to the 3rd floor. Doesn't kill the person on the 2nd floor until he's leaving, when the person on the 2nd floor encounters him. Here again, that raises the question, if you're in a multi-level building and you're just there to kill anyone, why would you take the risk of going to the highest floor? So what law enforcement is going to have to do is they're going to have to explain to us a number of things. Right? Since these college kids moved in June, when is it exactly that this Washington State PhD student is supposed to have first become aware of them? Also, with regard to his car, the Elantra, what exactly is the evidence that ties the Elantra to this murder? Also, is there the possibility, since this house was known as a party house, that the suspect's DNA could have gotten in there when the suspect attended a party, as opposed to the night of the murders? What evidence do we have that the suspect was never in that house before the night of the murders? Also, law enforcement needs to explain to us how you could stab 4 people to death, right, on different floors, and not have blood in your car. Right? You know, where did all the blood go? How was he able to stab someone and leave them on the 2nd floor without the person being found in a pool of blood? Why did the housemates not realize at first that the person on the 2nd floor had been stabbed to death? Right? Also, the heroin use. You know, it's hard to believe that someone sober could pull off these murders while multiple people in the house hear nothing, sleep through it. How likely is it that someone with a heroin addiction is able to pull off these murders in a house in which he may never have been inside of before the night of the murders? Also, we're hearing, by the way, that as he drove with his father to the parents' house in the Poconos, and as he drove back, he apparently got stopped by police multiple times for driving infractions. And apparently he was under surveillance by police. So you have a guy here who is not only driving the alleged getaway car, but isn't even following traffic laws, isn't trying to drive carefully to avoid detection. No, this guy is in an Elantra And apparently he's driving in such a way where the police stop him periodically. So given that we have no evidence, at least none that I know of today, January 3rd, 2023, that this guy was even trying to hide the fact that he drove an Elantra. This guy wasn't trying to avoid detection. Right? Did he avoid detection for so long because the police were busy doing genealogy, DNA analysis? Or did he avoid detection for so long because the guy was carefree, has nothing to hide, because he hasn't done the crime? So we all understand the pressure on law enforcement to solve this awful crime. We also know that sometimes you hear that there's a suspect, the police arrest the suspect, only to find out that that suspect did not do the crime. Right? At this stage, even with all the information in the news that this Koberger guy may not have had a girlfriend, folks, he's not the only guy in his 20s who didn't have a girlfriend. Right? The idea that this guy had a heroin addiction, okay, charge him with a drug offense. Right? In my eyes, the fact that he has a heroin addiction makes it extremely unlikely, less likely, that he'd be able to kill 4 people without detection, make it out of the house, not even have the people on the second floor realize that there's been a multiple stabbing the night before. Right? I have my doubts on the guilt of this guy. The news on the case seems awfully thin to me. I'm hearing the guy lost a lot of weight in high school. Really? That makes you a mass murderer? I'm hearing that the guy supposedly was surveilling these kids. Folks, I got news for you. If you're on a college campus, there's probably a pub nearby. If I show up at a college football game and then I go to the pub nearby and there's some kids in the pub, maybe I have GPS on my phone for the pub. That doesn't mean I'm surveilling anyone in the pub, right? These campuses have meeting places where kids congregate, student unions, pubs, coffee houses. Right? Let's find out what exactly the connection is between the suspect and the victim's homes. Let me also say, too, that if this guy enters the house and hasn't woken up anyone, I wonder how he would then go to the 3rd floor, see a guy up there, the boyfriend of one of the girls up there with 3 women, and then decide that he's going to follow through and actually kill them all. Right? Wouldn't a reasonable person have backed out at that point? Doesn't this crime reek of there being more than one person involved? Don't you have a problem with the idea of a lone wolf going into a house of kids who are 7 and 8 years younger than him? Folks, that's a huge age gap when you're in your 20s, right? I remember being on campus and looking at seniors and saying, man, look at all these old people, right? Now we're talking about a 28-year-old PhD student. Isn't the idea of him being there and there being a guy there and he still follows through with the murders, isn't that a bit beyond belief? Anyway, that's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Let's keep an eye on this case. Maybe the police have a smoking gun. I would consider the smoking gun to be a bloody fingerprint, or the 4 victims' blood in his car, right? Something that luminol would pull out, right? That might be naked to the human eye, but with forensics might be detectable. If you don't have that, if all you have is the guy's Elantra that he has been driving for hundreds of miles and has family members in, right? If all you have is that the guy is awkward, or that the guy may have been hanging out on campus, then you might not have enough in this case. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.